Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in every man's life when the silence in his home speaks louder than the noise of the world. He wakes up to an empty room, walks through a house filled with echoes, and sits at a table where no one waits for him. The world around him is rushing forward, couples holding hands, laughter in the air, love stories unfolding before his eyes. Yet he walks a different path, not because he cannot love, but because life has led him to a place where he must stand alone. Loneliness is not always a choice, but how a man faces it defines his strength. There are those who believe that without a partner, without a hand to hold, without a voice calling their name in the night, life is incomplete. But what if I told you that the solitude of one man can hold more power than the distractions of 1,000 voices? What if I told you that in the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments where no one watches, there, in that space, a man discovers who he truly is? This is not a story of despair, nor is it a cry for sympathy. This is a story of resilience, of faith, of a man who chooses to walk this road with his head held high, knowing that his worth is not determined by whether someone stands beside him. Because when the world says, you need someone to complete you, there is a deeper voice whispering, you are already whole. There is a common misunderstanding in the world today that being alone is a sign of weakness. People often assume that a man who lives without a partner, without a girlfriend, without someone constantly by his side must be lacking something, must be incomplete, must be in need of fixing. But the truth is far greater than that. Solitude is not a burden, it is a gift. It is not a sign of weakness, it is a training ground for strength. Think of the great men in history, the ones who changed the course of the world. They were not always surrounded by crowds. Many of them walked alone for long seasons of their lives. They spent time in deep thought, in prayer, in reflection. They did not fear the silence because they understood that silence is where strength is built. It is in solitude that a man truly meets himself, where he faces his deepest fears, his greatest doubts, and his most powerful dreams. When a man is alone, he is given the opportunity to develop something that many never will: inner resilience. In the noise of companionship, it is easy to lean on others, to let their voices drown out the whispers of his own soul. But when he walks alone, he has no choice but to listen. He hears his own thoughts, his own struggles, his own questions about life. And in that process, he learns to stand firm. He learns to be his own anchor, his own foundation, his own guide. This kind of strength is not found in crowds. It is not developed in constant company. It is forged in the fire of solitude. It is in the quiet moments when no one is watching that a man discovers what he is truly made of. He learns that his worth is not determined by who loves him, who stands beside him, or who calls his name in the night. His worth is found in his character, his integrity, his ability to walk forward even when no one is cheering him on. Society has painted a picture that a man without a woman is somehow lost. But what if he is not lost at all? What if instead he is being refined? What if his solitude is not an accident, but a divine appointment? What if this time alone is not meant to break him, but to build him? The world sees a man sitting alone and assumes he is lonely. But what if he is sitting in the presence of something greater? What if he is listening to a voice that others are too distracted to hear? Strength is not found in the easy places. It is not built in comfort. It is shaped in the moments where a man has to face himself, where he has to wrestle with his own thoughts, where he has to decide who he will be when no one else is looking. A man who learns to stand strong in solitude is a man who cannot be shaken when the storms of life come. He has already faced his greatest battles alone, and he has won. Think of the warrior who trains in the mountains, far away from the noise of the city. He does not need an audience. He does not require applause. He trains in silence, knowing that when the time comes, he will be ready. He does not question his purpose simply because he walks alone. He knows that his strength is being built in the hidden places, in the moments no one sees. And so it is with a man who lives alone. His life is not empty, it is full of preparation. His days are not wasted, they are being used to refine him. He is not without direction. He is being led in ways that only those who embrace solitude can understand. He is learning patience, discipline, focus. He is developing a kind of strength that is unshakable, that is not dependent on circumstances or people. There will be times when doubt creeps in, when the world's voice tries to convince him that he is missing out, that he is somehow incomplete. But those who know the power of solitude do not give in to those lies. They understand that true strength is not found in being surrounded by people, but in knowing who you are when you stand alone. A man who embraces solitude is not running from love. He is preparing for something deeper. He is not afraid of companionship. He is simply not desperate for it. He knows that his value is not tied to his relationship status. His worth is not measured by who chooses him. His identity is not wrapped up in whether he is alone or not. This kind of man walks with confidence, not because he has everything, but because he knows that what he lacks does not define him. He is aware that solitude is not a curse, but a season of growth. He does not waste his days longing for someone to complete him. Instead, he uses his days to become complete within himself. And when the world looks at him, when they wonder how he can stand so strong, how he can walk with such purpose despite being alone, they will see the truth. They will see that solitude is not a sign of weakness. It is a training ground for strength. It is where a man is made, where his heart is tested, where his soul is refined. The man who learns to stand alone is the man who will never be shaken, no matter what life brings. A man's worth is not defined by his relationship status, but by his purpose. This is a truth that the world often forgets. Society places so much emphasis on finding love, on being in a relationship, on having someone to call your own, that it begins to paint the picture that without a partner, a man is somehow lacking. But let me tell you, a man's worth is not tied to whether or not he has someone standing beside him. His value is not determined by whether he is in a relationship or whether he walks this journey alone. His worth is found in something far greater, his purpose. Purpose is what gives a man meaning. It is what drives him forward. It is what makes him wake up each morning with determination in his heart. A man who has a purpose is never truly alone, because his mission in life fills his soul in ways that no human companionship ever could. When a man understands his purpose, he does not waste his time searching for validation from others. He does not measure his worth by who loves him or who chooses him. Instead, he stands firm in the knowledge that his life has meaning beyond relationships, beyond emotions, beyond fleeting moments of affection. Look at history. The greatest men who have ever walked this earth were not defined by whether or not they had a girlfriend, a wife, or a romantic partner. They were defined by what they accomplished, by what they stood for, by what they gave to the world. Their impact was not measured by the relationships they had, but by the purpose that burned within them. They were driven by something greater than personal happiness. They were driven by a mission, a calling, a reason for existing that went beyond themselves. A man who knows his purpose does not crumble under the weight of loneliness. He does not feel incomplete simply because he is not in a relationship. Instead, he uses this time, this season of solitude, to build himself, to refine his skills, to grow stronger in his faith, in his knowledge, in his ability to contribute to the world. He does not waste his days longing for someone to complete him, because he knows that he is already whole. He does not seek a relationship out of desperation, but out of abundance, knowing that when the time is right, love will not be something he needs, but something he can give. The world will try to tell him otherwise. It will tell him that a man without a woman is somehow broken, that he is missing out on life, that he is incomplete. But a man who understands his purpose does not listen to the noise of the world. He listens to something deeper. He listens to the calling that was placed in his heart long before he ever thought about relationships. He knows that his value does not come from romance, but from what he was created to do. Purpose gives a man strength. It gives him direction. It gives him a reason to wake up every day and fight for something bigger than himself. A man without purpose will always feel lost, even if he is surrounded by love. But a man with purpose will never feel empty, even if he walks alone. That is the difference. That is what sets apart the men who make a difference from the men who simply exist. Think of the warrior who trains in solitude. He does not train so that he can impress someone. He does not fight so that he can gain approval. He fights because it is his calling. It is his purpose. He knows that the battle is coming and he prepares for it, whether or not anyone sees him. His strength is not dependent on applause. His worth is not tied to who recognizes him. He is driven by something deeper, something unshakable. And so it is with a man who understands his purpose. He does not seek validation from the world. He does not measure his worth by the number of people who love him. He knows that his life is meant for something greater. He knows that he was not placed on this earth simply to be in a relationship, but to fulfill a mission, to make an impact, to leave a legacy. A man who chases purpose over validation is a man who cannot be broken. He does not crumble under loneliness because he knows he is never truly alone. He does not seek love out of desperation because he is already fulfilled. His worth is not determined by whether or not someone chooses him, because he has already chosen himself. And when the world looks at him, when they wonder how he can walk with such confidence, how he can stand so strong even without a partner, they will see the truth. They will see that his strength does not come from who is beside him, but from the fire that burns within him. They will see that his worth is not found in his relationship status, but in the purpose that drives him forward. A man who knows his purpose is a man who is truly unstoppable. He is a man who cannot be shaken, who cannot be swayed, who does not need to search for meaning in others because he has already found it within himself. And that, my friends, is a life worth living. Loneliness is not an absence. It's an opportunity to grow deeper in faith and self-awareness. Many people fear being alone, as if solitude is a void that must be filled, as if an empty house, an empty chair, an empty bed signifies an empty life. But what if loneliness was never meant to be a punishment? What if the moments of being alone were not signs of something missing, but invitations to something greater? When a man finds himself alone, he stands at a crossroads. He can either see his solitude as an unbearable burden, something to escape at any cost, or he can embrace it as a season of growth, a time of refinement, a sacred space where he can discover the depths of his own soul. Those who run from loneliness often run from themselves. They distract themselves with people, with noise, with anything that will keep them from sitting in silence and facing the deeper questions of life. But those who are brave enough to embrace solitude, to lean into the silence, to listen to what their heart is truly saying, these are the men who grow. These are the men who become strong, not just in body, but in mind, in spirit, in wisdom. Loneliness has a way of revealing who a man really is. When no one else is around to affirm him, to validate him, to tell him what to do, he is left with nothing but himself. And in that space, he must decide who he is. Without the influence of a relationship, without the expectations of others shaping his identity, he has the rare opportunity to strip away everything false and come face to face with his true self. This is where faith is tested. When a man is alone, he can no longer rely on the comfort of another person's presence to keep him stable. He must turn to something deeper, something eternal. He must find his grounding in faith, in a belief that he is not truly alone, that there is a greater purpose behind his solitude. It is in these moments that he learns to trust, to listen, to seek something beyond the physical world. Some of the greatest men in history have walked through long seasons of solitude. They withdrew from the world, not because they were weak, but because they understood that true strength is built in the quiet places. They knew that in order to lead, in order to make an impact, in order to become who they were meant to be, they had to first find themselves in the stillness. They did not fear being alone because they knew that solitude was a classroom where wisdom is taught. A man who embraces loneliness as an opportunity rather than a curse begins to see life differently. He no longer views himself as someone who is missing out, but as someone who is being prepared. He understands that this season of being alone is not about what he lacks, but about what he is gaining. He is gaining clarity. He is gaining inner peace. He is gaining a deeper understanding of himself and of the world around him. It is in solitude that a man can refine his thoughts, sharpen his vision, and strengthen his character. When there are no distractions, when there is no one else to impress, he has the freedom to be honest with himself. He can evaluate his values, his beliefs, his goals. He can ask himself the hard questions. What do I truly want? What do I truly believe? Who am I when no one else is watching? These are the questions that many people avoid their entire lives. They stay busy, they jump from one relationship to the next. They fill their days with constant activity so that they never have to stop and think. But a man who is willing to embrace solitude, to sit in the quiet and wrestle with these questions, will come out stronger, wiser, and more at peace than those who spend their lives running from loneliness. Faith is not something that grows in comfort. It is not something that develops when everything is going well, when a man is surrounded by love and companionship. Faith is built in the moments when he has nothing else to rely on, when he must stand alone and trust that there is something greater holding him up. Faith is what carries a man through the seasons of solitude, reminding him that he is never truly alone, that even in the silence he is being watched over, guided. Self-awareness is another gift that comes with embracing loneliness. When a man has time to reflect, to truly understand himself, he becomes more secure in who he is. He no longer seeks approval from others because he has already approved of himself. He no longer fears rejection because he knows his worth does not depend on anyone else's opinion. This kind of self-awareness creates confidence, not the shallow confidence that comes from external validation, but a deep, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are. A man who has spent time alone, who has faced himself, who has taken the opportunity to grow in faith and self-awareness is a man who is ready for anything. He is not desperate for a relationship because he has already built a full and meaningful life on his own. He is not afraid of being alone because he has learned to enjoy his own company. He does not feel the need to prove anything to anyone because he has already proven to himself that he is strong, capable, and whole. The world often views loneliness as a problem that needs to be solved, but the truth is, loneliness is an invitation. It is an opportunity to step into something greater, to develop a deeper relationship with oneself and with God, to refine one's purpose and prepare for the future. It is not an absence but a gift, a space in which a man can grow in ways that he never could if he was constantly surrounded by people. So when a man finds himself alone, he should not see it as a punishment. He should not rush to fill the space with meaningless distractions. Instead, he should embrace it, use it, cherish it, because in that solitude he will find something far greater than he ever imagined. He will find himself. Love should never be a search for completion, but an extension of wholeness. Too many people walk through life believing that they are incomplete, that they are missing a piece of themselves, that they need someone else to make them whole. They search for love like a missing puzzle piece, hoping that when they find the right person, everything will finally make sense, that all the emptiness they feel inside will be filled. But this is one of the greatest illusions the world has ever sold. Love was never meant to be a remedy for loneliness. It was never designed to complete a person. Love is not about finding someone to fix you. It is about being whole on your own and then sharing that wholeness with another. When a man understands this, he stops searching for love out of desperation. He stops looking for someone to fill his emotional gaps, to heal his wounds, to give him a sense of identity. Instead, he focuses on becoming the best version of himself. He works on his purpose, on his character, on his faith, on his mind. He does not rush into relationships just to escape loneliness because he understands that loneliness is not something another person can cure. It is something that must be faced and conquered within. A man who knows that love is an extension of wholeness is not afraid to be alone. He does not view solitude as a punishment, but as a time of preparation. He uses this time to build himself, to discover his values, to deepen his understanding of what love truly is. He does not settle for just anyone because he is not looking for someone to fix him. He is looking for someone who matches the strength he has already developed within himself. The problem with searching for completion in another person is that it places an unrealistic burden on them. No one else can carry the weight of your happiness. No relationship can permanently heal wounds that were meant to be dealt with individually. When two broken people come together expecting the other to fix them, the relationship becomes a cycle of neediness, dependency, and eventual disappointment. But when two whole people come together, when two individuals who have already built fulfilling lives on their own decide to share their journeys, love becomes something powerful. It is no longer about filling emptiness, it is about overflowing with something so strong that it naturally pours into another. A man who walks in wholeness does not seek validation from a relationship. He does not feel the need to prove his worth through romantic success. He knows that his value is already established, that his life already has meaning, that his purpose does not begin when he meets someone, but that it existed long before. His identity is not wrapped up in being someone's boyfriend or husband. It is wrapped up in something far deeper. This understanding changes everything. It shifts the way a man approaches relationships. He does not enter love with a sense of desperation, but with a sense of clarity. He is not looking for someone to complete him, but for someone who is already complete within themselves. He does not fall into relationships carelessly because he knows that love is not about fixing loneliness. It is about sharing purpose. Too often, people settle for relationships that drain them because they have bought into the lie that they cannot be whole on their own. They stay in situations that make them unhappy because they believe that being alone would be worse. But a man who understands his own completeness refuses to settle. He knows that being alone with purpose is far better than being with someone just to escape loneliness. He is not afraid of waiting because he knows that real love is not about rushing, it is about alignment. Think of a strong tree standing alone in the middle of a vast field. It does not need another tree beside it to survive. Its roots are deep, its branches stretch toward the sky. It is not lacking simply because it stands alone. But when another strong tree grows beside it, they do not compete for survival. They do not drain each other. They stand tall together, rooted in their own strength, yet complementing one another in beauty and purpose. This is how love should be. Not two people trying to hold each other up because they cannot stand on their own, but two individuals who are already whole, already strong, already full of life, choosing to grow side by side. A man who understands this does not chase love out of fear. He does not settle for relationships that distract him from his purpose. He does not lower his standards just to avoid being alone. Instead, he spends his time building himself, working on his dreams, developing his character. He waits, not because he is afraid of love, but because he values it too much to enter it carelessly. And when the right person comes along, he does not love them because he needs them. He loves them because he chooses them. He does not cling to them out of fear of being alone. He walks beside them in strength, knowing that their love is not a crutch, but a shared journey. A man who knows he is whole is not threatened by solitude. He does not see singleness as a failure. He does not measure his worth by whether or not he has a romantic partner. He understands that love is not something to desperately seek, but something that flows naturally when the time is right. This kind of man is rare. He does not jump from one relationship to the next, looking for someone to fill a void. He does not fear being single because he knows that his value does not decrease just because he is walking this path alone. He moves through life with confidence, knowing that if love comes, it will be an addition to his already full life, not the foundation of it. When the world looks at him, when they wonder why he is not desperate for a relationship, when they ask why he is content even in solitude, they will see the truth. They will see that he is not empty. He is not waiting for someone to complete him. He is already whole, already strong, already living a life of purpose. And if love comes, it will not be because he needed it to survive. It will be because he was already thriving, and he found someone who was doing the same. Love, for him, will not be a desperate search for completion, but a powerful extension of the wholeness he has already built within himself. A man's peace should never be dependent on another person. In a world that constantly pushes the idea that happiness comes from being with someone, that a relationship is the key to fulfillment, it takes true strength to stand alone and say, "My peace does not depend on anyone but me." Too many people place the weight of their inner peace on the shoulders of another person, expecting someone else to bring them happiness, to fix their emotional struggles, to calm their storms. But a man who understands his own worth, who has built his life on a foundation stronger than fleeting emotions, knows that his peace is something internal, something that no one else can give or take away. Peace is not found in another person, it is found within. A man who relies on others for his emotional stability will always be at the mercy of their actions. If they love him, he is happy. If they leave him, he is broken. If they approve of him, he feels valuable. If they reject him, he feels worthless. This is not peace, this is dependency. And a man who lives in dependency can never truly be free. True peace is unshakable. It is not built on relationships, emotions, or circumstances. It is built on a foundation that remains steady, even when everything around it changes. A man who has found true peace within himself is not shaken by loneliness. He does not rush into relationships just to avoid being alone. He does not seek validation from others because he has already validated himself. He does not need to be in a relationship to feel secure, because his security comes from something much deeper than human connection. This kind of peace is rare, but it is powerful. It allows a man to walk through life with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, he will remain standing. This is not to say that love and companionship are not beautiful things. They are. But they should never be the foundation of a man's peace. A relationship should add to his life, not be the thing that holds it together. Too often, people enter relationships expecting them to bring stability, only to find that when the relationship struggles, their entire life falls apart. A man who has built his peace from within does not experience this. He enjoys love when it comes, but he does not depend on it for survival. If a relationship ends, he does not crumble, because his foundation was never built on another person. It was built on something much stronger. When a man finds peace within himself, he no longer feels the need to prove anything to anyone. He does not chase approval, does not beg for attention, does not live in fear of being alone. He is content with his own company. He enjoys solitude, not because he is antisocial, but because he understands the value of being at peace with himself. He does not need constant validation to feel worthy, because he has already determined his worth. The world does not understand this kind of man. It looks at him and wonders why he is not desperate for love, why he is not constantly searching for someone to complete him. It does not understand how a man can be happy, confident, and fulfilled without a romantic relationship. But the truth is, this kind of man has discovered something that many never will. He has discovered that real peace is not found in another person, but in knowing who you are and being completely secure in that knowledge. This kind of peace makes a man powerful. It makes him unbreakable. It allows him to walk through life with his head high, not because he is arrogant, but because he knows that nothing outside of him can destroy what he has built inside of him. He does not live in fear of being abandoned because he has never abandoned himself. He does not fear rejection because he has already accepted himself. A man who has mastered his own peace is the kind of man who does not need to chase love because love will find him. There is something deeply attractive about a man who is secure, who does not need a relationship to feel valuable, who carries himself with quiet confidence. When love does come, it comes as a choice, not as a need. He does not enter relationships out of fear of being alone, but out of a genuine desire to share his life with someone. Too many people spend their lives running from themselves. They fill their days with distractions, with relationships, with anything that will keep them from sitting alone with their own thoughts. But a man who has found peace within does not run. He stands still. He faces himself. He learns to love his own company. He understands that his worth is not determined by whether or not someone loves him, but by the character he has built, the values he holds, and the way he carries himself through the world. This does not mean that life will always be easy. Even the strongest man faces challenges, struggles, moments of doubt. But a man who has built his peace internally knows how to withstand the storm. He does not allow circumstances to dictate his happiness. He does not allow heartbreak to destroy him. He does not allow loneliness to define him. He knows that no matter what happens, he will be okay, because his peace is not something that can be taken away. It is something that lives within him. A man who has found his own peace is not bitter. He does not walk through life with resentment, blaming others for his struggles, holding grudges against those who have hurt him. He understands that peace is not just about being alone. It is about letting go of anger, of pain, of anything that threatens to steal his joy. He forgives not because others deserve it, but because he refuses to allow negativity to take root in his heart. He moves forward not because he is unaffected by life's difficulties, but because he has learned how to carry them without letting them weigh him down. This kind of man is rare. In a world that is constantly telling people they need someone else to be happy, he stands apart. He proves that wholeness is not found in another person, but in a deep understanding of oneself. And because of this, he is not easily shaken. He does not waver in the face of hardship. He does not waver in the face of love. He knows that his life has meaning, whether or not someone else is standing beside him. And so he walks with peace. He does not rush. He does not panic. He does not let the opinions of others dictate his worth. He understands that real happiness does not come from being with someone. It comes from being at peace with yourself. And once a man has found this peace, nothing in the world can take it from him. A man who walks his path alone is not weak. He is strong beyond measure. In a world that constantly glorifies companionship, relationships, and social validation, it takes a rare kind of strength for a man to walk alone, to build himself without leaning on another, to carve his own path without waiting for someone to walk beside him. This is not the walk of a man who has failed to find love, but the walk of a man who refuses to settle for anything less than his purpose. There is a misconception in society that being alone is a sign of failure, that a man without a partner is somehow incomplete, that solitude is a punishment rather than a privilege. But a man who understands his worth knows that solitude is not a curse, it is a gift. It is a space where he can grow without distraction, where he can sharpen his mind, where he can become exactly who he was meant to be. A man who chooses to walk alone is not doing so because he has no other choice, but because he values the journey enough to walk it with intention. This kind of man is not afraid of silence. He does not fear the empty spaces where others rush to fill the void with temporary distractions. He embraces these moments, knowing that in the quiet, he hears himself the loudest. He does not need the noise of the world to define him, because he has already defined himself. He does not require constant validation because he has already determined his own worth. A man who walks alone is not distracted by the expectations of others. He does not chase love out of desperation, does not measure his success by whether or not he has someone by his side. Instead, he measures his success by the depth of his character, by the impact of his work, by the strength of his convictions. He knows that a man's worth is not determined by his relationship status, but by the integrity of his soul. When a man walks alone, he is forced to rely on his own strength. There is no one else to pick him up when he falls, no one else to reassure him when he doubts himself, no one else to push him forward when the road becomes difficult. And yet he keeps going. He learns to pick himself up, to encourage himself, to trust himself. He discovers a resilience that many never find because they have never had to stand on their own. This is the kind of strength that makes a man unstoppable. When he faces challenges, he does not break, he adapts. When he encounters setbacks, he does not quit, he learns. When life knocks him down, he does not stay there, he rises, stronger than before. Because he has walked alone, he has learned how to survive, how to endure, how to thrive, regardless of circumstances. Many men fear solitude because they have never learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. They associate being single with being undesirable, as if their worth is dependent on someone choosing them. But a man who has embraced his own journey knows that his value is not tied to another person's presence. He is not single because he lacks something. He is single because he is focused, because he is waiting for something real, because he refuses to compromise his vision for temporary companionship. The man who walks alone is often misunderstood. People question his choices, wonder why he is not desperate for love, assume that he must be unhappy. But what they fail to see is that he is not walking in sadness. He is walking in purpose. He is not alone because he has no options. He is alone because he values his own company enough to wait for what truly aligns with him. He understands that settling for the wrong person is far worse than standing alone. This kind of man does not need to prove himself. He does not chase relationships just to fit in, does not bend his standards just to avoid loneliness. He stands firm in who he is, knowing that when the time is right, the right person will walk beside him, not out of necessity, but out of choice. Walking alone does not mean a man is disconnected. It does not mean he does not experience love, friendship, or deep connection with others. It simply means that he is not defined by these things. He loves freely, but not out of fear. He connects deeply, but not out of need. He chooses relationships that add to his life rather than ones that define it. And when the world sees him, they may not understand his journey. They may not comprehend how a man can be at peace without a relationship, how he can walk with confidence without a partner, how he can thrive in a world that constantly tells him he needs someone else to be whole. But he does not need the world's understanding. He only needs his own. Because he knows that the strongest men in history, the ones who changed the world, the ones who left legacies that lasted long after they were gone, were men who were not afraid to walk alone. They were men who did not let society dictate their path, who did not let loneliness drive their decisions, who did not let the absence of a partner make them doubt their worth. They were men who knew that solitude is not emptiness, but power. That walking alone is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. That a man who can stand on his own is a man who can stand against anything. And so he walks, not with loneliness, but with purpose, not with desperation, but with confidence, not with emptiness, but with the fullness of knowing exactly who he is. And that in itself is more powerful than anything else the world can offer. A man who walks alone is not lost, he is focused. His strength is not in needing someone to complete him, but in knowing he is already whole. He does not chase love out of fear, but waits for what aligns with his purpose. His peace is internal, his confidence unshakable, and his path is defined by purpose, not pressure. The world may not understand him, but he does not seek its approval. He knows that true strength is not in avoiding solitude, but in embracing it, growing through it, and walking forward with unwavering resolve.